always believed that love was about mutual choice, two people moving toward each other. But in my story, for a very long time, only one of us was choosing. My name is Madeline Hart, but everyone close to me called me Maddie. I was 19 when I met Evan Mercer, a guy with an easy smile, a constant worrying in his eyes, and a dream of becoming a video game designer. He seemed like someone who knew exactly where he was going. I was a freshman studying psychology, living in a campus dorm and experiencing independence for the first time. But after meeting him, everything shifted so quickly that I didn't even notice how I stopped living my own life. At first, I simply helped him with school. He was always missing deadlines, mixing up documents, forgetting dates. Then I started skipping my own classes to attend his. He joked that he'd fall apart without me, and I laughed as if it wasn't true. 6 months later, we were living together in his tiny rented apartment. The bathroom tiles were cracked, and the upstairs neighbor played drums. But I felt like we were building something real. When Evan suggested moving with him to Portland, where he'd been offered an internship, I immediately agreed. I was supposed to continue my studies, but at that moment I told myself my education could wait. We have our whole lives ahead of us, he said, and I believed him. We moved in the spring. The city greeted us with drizzle, the smell of coffee, and that feeling of a fresh start. We rented a small apartment in an old brick building. Evan spent his days at the internship, and I worked as a waitress, supporting us financially. I cooked for him, listened to his project stories, filled out his paperwork, helped with his resumes. He promised that someday everything would pay off. 1 year turned into 2. Into 5. Friends asked, Maddie, when are you going back to college? I smiled. Soon. It's just not the right time. But that time never came. Gradually, Evan changed, not suddenly, but as if slowly fading around the edges. He stayed late at work, came home smelling a perfume that wasn't mine, laughing at jokes I hadn't heard. I told myself he was stressed, ambitious, overwhelmed. I was so attached to Aoi that I didn't notice how I was losing my me until one day I did. It happened in the middle of summer. I came home earlier than usual. My shift had been cut short. Walking up the stairs, I heard laughter. A woman's laughter. Light, melodic, too familiar with the space it occupied. It came from our apartment. The door was cracked open. I pushed it gently. She was sitting on the kitchen counter, wearing my t-shirt, barefoot, copper hair falling over her shoulders. And Evan stood between her legs, his hands on her waist. They didn't even notice me at first. That's how comfortable they were together. When he finally looked up, his face shifted, not in shame, but in annoyance, as if I had ruined his evening. It's not what it looks like, he said, still not stepping away from her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply understood that somewhere along the way, I had become a supporting character in my own story. Her name was Harper Lane. They'd met at work. He'd been helping her with projects, supporting her, teaching her. Once, I would have believed that. She wasn't shy about the truth. We've been together for almost a year, she said calmly, as if I were an accidental guest. A year. I had given him 6. He gave me emptiness. I left, quietly, without begging, breaking, or arguing. I took my bag, keys, and phone. Something inside me ended that day. I stayed with a friend while trying to remember who I was before him. 10 days later, Evan texted, "We should talk. You misunderstood everything." I deleted it without opening, but life has a sense of irony. A few weeks later, I received an official letter. Evan had used my name, my information, my SSN to open a credit line supposedly for furniture and electronics. In reality, he spent it on Harper. He didn't just leave me, he left me in debt. I didn't cry. I had already cried the day I walked in on them. Now it was time to act. I met with an attorney from a women's support center. We reviewed documents, messages, transactions. Everything pointed to fraud. Evan always relied on me to fix things, swallow things, tolerate things. But the version of me he depended on no longer existed. I filed a legal complaint. Against him. Against Harper. Against the company that covered for them. And there was more than enough evidence to start a formal investigation. A month later, Evan called. His voice shook. "Maddie, please, stop this. I'll lose my job." "Evan," I said calmly, "you're just reaping what you sowed." The investigation lasted almost 3 months. He was fired. He was forced to compensate me financially. Harper left the city. Her name had become office gossip. Her projects reassigned. Evan tried everything, texting, calling, showing up at my door. But nothing could undo what he'd done. At the final hearing, when the court formally recognized his actions as fraud, he sat in the hallway with his head down. I stopped beside him. He looked up, broken, confused, a shadow of the man I once loved. "Are you happy now?" he asked. "I'm free," I answered. I re-enrolled in college, found a small, bright apartment, learned to wake up without fear, without dependency, without the feeling that I had to live someone else's life. I finally understood the cost of love and the worth of my own self. Evan disappeared from my world. But one day I saw him. He was working as a delivery driver, running across the street with a package. He noticed me and froze. I nodded, not out of spite, but with finality. Sometimes, to reclaim your life, you must survive betrayal. Sometimes, you have to break the person who broke you. But the most important part is learning to rebuild yourself.